All right, the 2021 Bassmaster Elite Series season is done. And this year on my Bass Cat, I ran a little different setup. I had 3 different brands of electronics. I've run Lowrance for years and years and years and years, but there was some new technology that I wanted access to, that I wanted to be able to run, that I said, okay, enough. I'm gonna go independent. I'm gonna have Lowrance, Humminbird, and Garmin. I've got all 3 units on the front of my boat. I've got Humminbird and Lowrance here at the console, and I'm gonna walk you through everything that I think about all 3 of these brands and what's going on right now with my boat after a full season of using them. Because people always ask, hey, is Live Scope better than 360? Is 360 better than Live Scope? Is the Humminbird side imaging better than the Lowrance side scan? Here, I'm gonna give you the whole shebang right here in this one video. After my 2021 season, I'm gonna tell you everything that's going on as of right now. Technology is rapidly increasing and getting better and faster, and better pictures and all this kind of stuff. But as for right now, here's my conclusion on the console. Humminbird, great units. I ran a Helix 12, good unit. Lowrance HDS Live 12. Love this unit, have had it for a number of years. Ever since the live units came out, I've always had at least one of these, or at least 2 of these on my boat at all times. Really like the HDS 12. It's got some cool features. So first of all, I have both side imaging, side scan transducers mounted in the back under my Bass Cat. As you can see, I have them both pulled up at all times. Both of them are pulled up at all times because there are times I can see things a lot clearer on the Humminbird, but yet there's other times whatever piece of cover shows up a lot better on the Lowrance. Now, like right here, you can see there's a little break right there, and you can see there's some rubble, maybe a little bit more detail, but you can definitely see the same rubble there. The shoreline is crystal clear on the Humminbird, whereas it's real faint on the Lowrance right there. Just a little difference. See the shoreline, you can see it, but it's faint, crystal clear. You can tell there's rock right along the bank there. You can see that cover. That cover probably sticks out a little bit more on the Humminbird. Not quite as defined there for whatever reason. But this stuff, out here, crystal clear, crystal clear. And then look, way over here, you've got some cover. It didn't even hardly show up on the Humminbird. It barely showed up, but you can kind of see that there's some hard cover out there. So it's wild, the differences between the 2. These are dock pilings, very defined dock pilings. You can see the same dock pilings here, but it's not as defined. So it seems like the stuff further out is a little better on the Humminbird. The stuff closer in, is as good or better on the Lowrance. You can see there's a little something right there, like a part of a chair. You see it on both of them, crystal clear. You can look at the bank and see everything. You can see it, but it's just not as defined on the Lowrance. And some of this, we lose a lot of the signal here for whatever reason, but you can see more cover on the Lowrance, and further out, just random. Over here you can see a little more cover on the bottom with that one. That's a rope tied to a buoy. You can see it on both of them pretty well. And then as we're going off the drop off here, it's definitely more clear on the Lowrance, and we seem to be losing a little signal on the Humminbird. It's just not caught up to it. But over here on the Lowrance, we're seeing that crystal clear. Plus we just picked up this, there's a fish suspended out here. We picked that up there, and we don't have anything on the Humminbird. So that's why running both of them is the deal to me. I don't know the actual reason for that. Here's the conclusion. They are both good. They're both good. Humminbird might be a little bit better further out, better detail further out. When you get 60, 80 feet from the boat, might have a little bit better detail, maybe. Right under the boat, The Lowrance might have a little crisper detail right under the boat. I don't know. I can tell you this much. There are a lot of settings on your Humminbird that you can adjust. Not as much on your Lowrance, but you don't need to. You don't need to adjust the settings on your side scan as much on the Lowrance as you do the Humminbird for whatever reason. That's one of the only things that there are more adjustments on the Humminbird than the Lowrance. The Lowrance, by and large, has a lot more features, a lot more things you can adjust and customize the way you exactly want it. That's one of the things I love about the Lowrance. So now we're going over to the down portion. The down imaging on Humminbird and Lowrance are both good. They're both good. And just like with the other, you need to adjust a lot of what's going on here with the Humminbird. I'm not going to get into all the settings because that'd be like a whole nother video. Maybe I will do that. But the down on the Humminbird, I actually took it out of the mega settings and went back to the traditional 420 to 520 kilohertz, which is the not mega, it's the regular, whatever they want to call it. I thought that was a little clearer picture for me in shallow water, deep water, all around. For deep water, you can really dial in that mega and it can get really good, but then you go into like 6 or 8 foot of water and you kind of lose a lot of that. So that's why I went with that. I used the down imaging for with the Humminbird, and I used the 2D with the Lowrance, and I used that for a reason. The 2D and the Lowrance, that's the through hull transducer. So when you're running down the lake, that 2D transducer is mounted on the pad, so you can see exactly how deep it is as you're running. No other brand is even close to the Lowrance in that 2D sonar. I find a lot of cover when I'm running down the lake, running into pockets, running into creeks, running all around. I find a lot of cover running 40 and 50 miles an hour with this Lowrance 2D. That 2D is amazing. You can see all kind of detail. You can see humps, little breaks. You can even see balls of fish. It's crazy how much you can see with that 2D while you're running down the lake. So that's one of the reasons I like the Lowrance so much. Then we're talking about mapping. I use the maps on both back here at the console. I use the Navionics updates on my Lowrance, and I use the Lake Master on the Humminbird. I'm here at Smith Mountain Lake. I don't even have the map for Smith Mountain Lake on the Lake Master. But every place that we went this year on tour, I had the Lake Master pulled up right here in that screen, and then I had the Navionics version right here, so I could compare and contrast. By and large, I would say the Lake Master is better, more detailed, shows you more little nooks and crannies and points and ditches and things like that. Navionics, pretty darn good. Up north, Lake Master was definitely better, but down south, a lot of the places, it's every bit as good. I mean, some of the detail here on Smith Mountain Lake is fantastic. I mean, you can see all the docks, you can see every little hump. Really good detail on a lot of the lakes with that Lake Navionics. So you're not gonna miss a ton, but for me, I want all the information possible so that I can gather. So that's why I had the Lake Master on there as well. And I had this, but I had these two bad boys mounted on a Bass Boat Technologies mount on my console. Never had a single seconds issue with any of that right there. But now let's go up to the front. That's where the fun part is. That's where it gets really tight. This is a Bass Cat Era. It's not a huge boat, but let's go up there and look at this contraption that I had put together up here. All right, here we're up on the front. This is the contraption I was talking about. Don't pay attention to this black box right here. This is temporary. This is for some other filming we're gonna do while we're out here. We're gonna do some other stuff, but I'm gonna give you this is the 2021 recap of all the units together. Now, as you can see, I got the Garmin here. It's the Garmin, it was an Echo Map 102, I believe is what that was. I got the black box in the rod locker, and then I'll show you the trolling motor situation here in a minute. Another Helix 12 up here, another HDS Live up here, but the Lowrance units, front and back, are connected with Ethernet, and because I have the Sonic Hub on there, Sonic Hub gives you the radio and all kind of cool stuff. Well, really like that. Got speakers, makes it a lot of fun on the water. Anyway, got all that connected, NEMA, Ethernet. Humminbird Helix 12 up here. I've got this up here so that I can have the Lake Master again, and I can have the 360. I've got 360 on the front, which you can see that rod right there. That's what that's for. Got the 360 up here. I love that unit. I love that piece of equipment, and that's the main reason I've got the Humminbird up on the front, is to be able to see that 360 view right there. That is the deal. These screens right here are basically what I have run all year, and why up here on the front with the Garmin, it's just live scope. That's all I've got on there. It's just the live scope. I'll dive into the settings in a second. The Humminbird, you can see they got Lake Master and the 360. Occasionally, I will make sure that I have the right panel on, but occasionally I'll zoom in a little bit. If I want to be able to see the bottom a little better, I'll zoom in one time, so it's a 2x on that 360. You miss a little bit on the stuff far out, but if you want to see more detail in what you're looking at right there, that's the way to do it. Or you could back it out. Maybe you're not getting older like me and you can see all this stuff really well, but you can see some detail right there, and you can see that there's some rock up in front of it. You can see we're up against the bank, and you can see that we're up against the bank, and there's definitely rock all along this bank, and you can see where we're losing a lot of signal right here. That means it's dropping off real sharp. So the 360 was amazing to be able to understand the lay of the land wherever you are. If you're in the middle, you can see that there's rocks over here, trees over here, brush pile up here. You can see all that stuff. You can see some fish on there. That's not specifically or mainly what I use the 360 for. And then back here with the Lowrance, I used my mapping here. I would have one, I had two different maps. One zoomed out a little bit more so I could see where I was relative to like the little vicinity. The other one is zoomed in almost as far as you can zoom it in. That way I can stay precisely on whatever spot that I would want to stay on if I'm not, 2 feet from a branch. I mean, I'm 2 feet from a branch, so I know where I am on the lake. If I'm out in the middle of a huge flat, if out in the middle of Okeechobee, this is what I'm gonna have to rely on to be able to know I'm exactly where I thought I was, or I'm 6 feet over, I'm 10 feet over, I'm 30 feet off. It can give you the precise location of where you are, and that it uses the 0.1 antenna. That 0.1 antenna it's directional, so it tells you which way your boat is pointing as well. That's a big part. So waypoints and waypoint management, Lowrance hands down is the deal. I use the 2D built in and the Minn Kota to connect to the Lowrance right here. So that's just my 2D right there, and then that's my live scope up there. On the live scope, I'm gonna do a whole video that explains to you all the settings that I ran, and it took me a while, to be totally honest, took me a while to figure it out. Took me a couple tournaments really to really kind of dial it in. Now that I'm more comfortable and understand the units more, I'm gonna do a whole video on that. That's quite a bit of explaining to do there. But as you can see, there's not a ton of room up here on the front of my Bass Cat. So I mounted this Lowrance unit right here on the front of the deck. This is on a Mini Kong, TH Marine Mini Kong mount, and so is this. These two units are on those Mini Kong mounts. And I had the Minn Kota Ultrex I've run. This is, I think, the 5th overall Ultrex I've run. Last year I ran the Lowrance Ghost 2020. I really like that unit, that trolling motor. I'm gonna go back to that next year because there's nothing else out there yet that's gonna be better. So I'm gonna go back to the Ghost. There's a few advantages, I think, to the Ghost, but to be honest, they're both really good trolling motors. You get a little more efficiency and things like that with the Ghost, with the brushless motor. I think that the mount overall, this mount on the Ghost is probably a little bit tougher, but this is just such a tried and true trolling motor. I mean, the Ultrex is just tried and true. You take care of it, you don't beat it up, it's gonna last and last and last and last. So that's why I kind of went back to the Ultrex. But I'm gonna pull it out of the water real quick, kind of show you the business end. Now don't pay attention to this right here. This is the active target with Lowrance. I'm gonna be testing that later. I did not run this transducer this year. on tour. I did not run it. I'm gonna be testing it, may run it next year, don't know yet. We'll have to see that in a future video. But the 360, this is how I had it mounted. I would adjust it up and down depending on the, you know, the depth that I'm fishing, how high and low my trolling motor needed to be. And then I ended up moving my Garmin LiveScope transducer down to the barrel of the trolling motor. I did that for one reason. It's because it gets that transducer a little further away from the 360. I feel like the 360 and the LiveScope, they don't interfere with each other, to whereas you're not seeing, you know, the marks on either one to where it's massive interference. I just feel like it's a little clearer picture. Patrick Walters gave me that tip. That's what he found out. He thought it was a little clearer picture when he got those transducers a little further away from each other. And I agree with it. But when you put that down there on the barrel, it's a lot more susceptible to get knocked off. So that's just the negative part of having it down there. I never did, but you could probably get the perspective mount and have a little more, you know, a little bit of distance between the two, between the 360 and that other transducer. But I think getting it down there on the barrel is the best way to get your best picture. If you're fishing a lot of standing timber, prepare for this little piece right here to be broken on the Garmin. It's just, it comes with it. I broke one off when we went to Fork this year. So I got like 2 different replacements and I never had it replaced. I never had to replace it again. So in 1 week I knocked it off one time. It didn't hurt the transducer, just the bracket, that little piece of plastic. It was like it falls off or breaks so that you don't break your whole transducer and have to pay another $500 or whatever the transducer by itself is. So that's kind of what I did. And then I had a precision Sonar brace right here, and it doesn't make it completely rigid, because when you hit a boat wake or something, it still has enough that it'll kind of rotate inward. It's not completely rigid, so it's not going to totally kill that. And then one other little tip on the 360 is put your little bead of silicone right around in there, and you may not have any water intrusion issues. Just saying. Just throw a little bead right there. It's a little tip. Throw that in there, and you'll have that. But then the other little tip is something that I figured out. When you put any kind of brace along here, the little boat wakes, the little rigid boat wakes, like that, it will cause this to slide up. It causes the whole 360 shaft to slide up. It is the weirdest phenomenon I've ever seen. So it took me a couple tournaments to figure it out, and I'm like, why is my damn shaft keep sliding up? So what I did is I took electrical tape and I just wrapped it around there where I wanted it to, like to stop it. So I wrapped some electrical tape right there, about 8 or 10 wraps, and it kept that shaft from sliding up in those two. And it didn't matter how tight you tightened them, it would slide up. It was the weirdest deal. But anyway, that was kind of a couple little tips on the 360, and it all really worked together well. I'm gonna drop the trolling motor back down and show you. The biggest deal for me, a lot of people, if they're not familiar with LiveScope or Active Target or whatever, they think, oh, well, it's cheating because you can just look out there and you can see the fish. Not exactly. I'm just telling you right now, that ain't the deal. I would say at least 60% of what this does is that it shows you where the cover is instantly. So if I'm fishing along here and I look up there and I'm like, ooh, there's a big stump. I see it on the 360. I can take my trolling motor, move it around, and then look for it on the LiveScope. This is not a good picture because I'm in like 3 feet of water and it's not the best. We'll show you a little bit better picture here in a minute. But you could see, be like, oh, there's the stump right there, and I can make the cast. I know exactly where it is, and then I can look and say, oh, there, it's actually 40 feet or however far, and I know basically how far to cast to be able to hit that stump. Efficiency is the name of the game. Efficiency. We're fishing against the clock. We're fishing against other anglers, but we're trying to be as efficient as we can during our tournament days. And it doesn't matter if you're fun fishing. you don't want to go out and throw in a bunch in no man's land for the majority of the day where you're not, you know, probably not going to get bit. You want to throw to the cover, you want to throw to where the fish are. Now, if you see a stump there and then you scan around and you're like, uh-oh, you see a fish next to that stump, now you're going to really pay attention to make sure you hit that stump or hit real close to that stump, because you know, you're like, oh, there's something there, I can see it. A lot of times you can see that fish on there. For me, since I'm not used to that, I never really got hung up on seeing fish near cover that I couldn't catch. I would mess with them if those fish were reacting, you know, like chasing my bait. Maybe I would change colors, change baits, slow down, speed up. But I didn't spend long. I'm not used to that. I'm not used to video game fishing. So I just, you know, I would try to make a few changes. If they didn't bite, I'd move on. So that was, it didn't hurt me. I know a lot of guys have had major issues about getting hung up of seeing fish on there and not being able to catch them. And a big part for me is, even if I see them on live scope, I'm not 100% sure that they're bass. I might be 98%, but there's 2% to where I don't want to be wasting time trying to find fish or trying to catch fish that may not even be a bass. That's just, that's the biggest thing for me. If they're not reacting, maybe they're a drum that's chasing it. Maybe they're, you know, a catfish that's chasing it. I'm not positive, especially if they're out there a little bit distance. It's really hard to get a crystal clear picture of what they look like. Sometimes you can tell their proportions, what kind of fish they are, really once you get it dialed in, but that's kind of how it is. So I've had the power poles down. So I'm gonna put those up, and we're gonna trolling motor up here a little bit and see if we can find a couple things to be able to look at on this live scope. You also have my power pole buttons right there. Just super efficient system here on the front, in my opinion. And the other part is, if you look down, you can see where my feet are. Whenever I was fishing, I could keep my feet almost side by side, and my foot just goes right up under that Lowrance unit right there. And so I just liked the way that worked. It was very efficient. It never got in my way, wasn't ever a problem. But as we scroll around up here, you can kind of see that you know, keeping an eye on the 360 here, you can see that there's more rocky stuff out there. You know, with the drop-offs, it's harder to see, but you can look right up here. There's a fish right up under the boat. You can see a couple of these rings of where there's a little bit of interference. That's typical for most Garmin units. It's just part of the cone. I don't know if it's where the different sonar signals overlap each other, but that little ring right there is, I could eliminate it, but I'm gonna lose some of my detail out here. You know, I've got this thing run out to 80 feet, and when you get into the right water conditions, you can see fish, you know, way out here. You can see them way out here. And, you know, like I said, you just got to watch to see what this stuff is right here, because that's a lot of interference. But when a fish comes through like it did just a minute ago, it's gonna pop up white. It's gonna be white. And then as I scan around, you know, I'm just going around real slow to the right. Go back around to the left. You know, it's out deeper. You can get a sense, okay, out here in front of the boat, it's a lot deeper. I'm going back to the right. You know, we're going, you know, it's about shallower over here to the right. So you can see that efficiency real well. We're not even seeing any fish down through here. And there's a good example right there. So I'm seeing there's a big stump out there, you know, a little in front of the boat and to the left. My trolling motor is out there, and there it is right there. Now I can see that stump, and I don't see, it might be a little something on there. So you can kind of watch it. A lot of times they'll move on you, and you can see that's that stump right there that we were looking at on the 360. That's how I'm talking about how efficient it makes you about seeing the cover and then zeroing right in and being able to see them. And then once you see it, you get over top of it, then I would mark it down here. I never messed with any of the waypoints on the Garmin. I never messed with any of the mapping on the Garmin. None of that stuff. It was just strictly just strictly the live scope. So yeah, that's kind of my deal on my 2021 boat. That's kind of the synopsis of the year in my electronics. Was it crazy? Yes. I ran lithium batteries on my cranking battery. That was a big deal. If you're not aware, the Garmin, I think the Lowrance probably the same way. If you have a drop in voltage, your signal is going to get weak and you're not going to be able to see as clear. So your voltage, you want to keep your voltage very high. That's where that lithium comes in. The voltage stays higher longer and it recharges faster. Not going to get into a whole battery seminar, but you need to make sure you have plenty of juice on. If you have multiple units like this, you definitely need to make sure you have plenty of juice. But if you have that live scope or active target, you definitely want to make sure you have that higher voltage battery so you can be able to deliver the full signal and be able to see that crystal clear picture up on the front. So if anybody has any more questions or any more comments, drop them down there. I'll do my best to answer anything, but that's pretty much my whole Lowrance, Humminbird, Garmin experience for the 2021 Bassmaster Elite Series season.